It's bright this morning. Morning, everyone. Day 2-ish. Okay. It's Vegas. Like, clocks don't work here, right? There's a reason why there are no windows onto the casino floor. You're not supposed to know what time it is, what day it is, how long you've been sitting at that table. But yeah, I got back last night after dinner, which was amazing. So thank you to the AR team at ServiceNow for hosting us. And I was like, I'm not talking to y'all. And it's not because I don't love talking to y'all. It's just I was done for the night. I was done. It was a long day yesterday. And so we're just going to call day 3 morning, day 2-ish, right? Okay. You'll live. You'll survive. Okay. Let's get into it. ServiceNow here at Knowledge. I just have to say, I got to give a shout out to my girl. Do you see this? How cool is this? Suzanne, I always mess up your last name. Let's also be very honest about that. Settinger. Oh God, Suzanne, you know who you are. She is the fabulous director of AI and ML product marketing over at AWS, and gave me this epic bracelet, Women in AI. And I got to tell you, talk about a powerhouse of women in AI, right? AWS, right? You've got Suzanne, who's just amazing. You've got Julia White, CMO, on top of that entire organization. And hey, if you know about, talk about a leader who has changed and driven a roadmap on AI. So Suzanne, thank you for this. This means a lot. And it was great to catch up and, get a little glimpse of all the fun things that are happening with the amazing AI portfolio and things like Nova. And so thank you. And yesterday, day 2 at Knowledge here with ServiceNow, it was like, okay, so if day 1 was like all the inspiration and all of the future, which could be summarized in those 2 letters, AI. Day 2 was really about the how to get there, for a business. I don't want to call it like the sausage making day or like the plumbing day, but it kind of was about the foundation of how you make it real, how you make AI and all of the opportunity, all of the business opportunity that's wrapped up into it. How do you make that become a reality that's meaningful for the people who are within your organization and for the people who you are in service of, namely your customers? And so day 2 was a lot about the data and the data fabric and the data strategy of ServiceNow, and a lot about the core business applications from HR and finance and supply chain, those things that really make the business run. And is that to say that, the applications near and dear to my heart, things around service and things around marketing and that lovely strategy we call CX, does that mean that it's not core to the business? No, of course. Of course, those are core to the business. That's how we reach and engage and develop those durable, profitable relationships with our customers. In case you didn't know or hear me on my soapbox at my TED Talks, rambling on about that. But at ServiceNow, this suite known as their core business solutions, it's really about what makes business run: the HR services, the finance services, supply chain. But what I think is really important to note about how ServiceNow thinks about this, and I'm sorry, is there like a weird, like heavenly glow aura that's decided to wrap around the CRTV logo as I sit here and talk? Hang on, okay, I'm gonna do that for a second because that was getting like, okay, a little weird. Anyway, what I really like about how ServiceNow not only packages this, but also talks about this and gives a language to their customers to think about this differently. I think for a lot of technology vendors, and for as long as I can remember, even when I was on the buying side of this exchange, a lot of folks tried to make business technology feel easier by partitioning it into front office, middle office, back office, right? And it's kind of easy to think about those terms, right? Because they're fairly, like, let's be honest, they're fairly old-fashioned terms, right? It's like when you talk, oh, I'm going to be in the front of the house, and we got to put all the acceptable people in the front of the house because they're the ones that like look nice and can talk to the customers who walk in the door, and all the laborers, the people who actually make the stuff, they got to in the back of the house. And so there's this partitioning that tends to happen. And the reality of modern business is that we don't really think of our people like that. We don't necessarily think of our businesses like that. I can't remember the last time I sat down in a meeting with someone who was seriously buying technologies, and they're like, well, let me show you my diagram of my front office, my middle office, and my back office solutions. Now they just need to connect their people, right? Like it's I think it's a convenient partitioning, and I get why we do it. And it's like, seriously, this glow is following me. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I think the interesting thing that ServiceNow is doing, especially with their core business solutions and their core business suite, is that they're acknowledging that these are the tools, these are the applications, and these are the people who really sit at that core of how the business runs and how the business operates. But they cannot be partitioned away from all of the other functions that might be at that forward flank of meeting and reaching and engaging with the customer. And I think that's wildly important to focus on for just a second, because this idea that somehow like finance sits in a back office or a middle office and doesn't ever engage with the customer, or doesn't need that insight into what that customer's history was, or they can have a separate view that's just has anyone had to make a collections call? Has anyone had a customer not pay their bill? You really want that to happen without insight or without any back history of what that customer is like? It's wild. It's wild to think of that in the name of convenience for outlining or mapping or even visualizing a technology estate, we're going to somehow believe that that person who's calling out for that collections motion doesn't need that information, or somehow doesn't need to have that sitting right there on their unified desktop because they sit in finance. Like, where your chair isn't necessarily what your job is. And I think we forget that. But I think ServiceNow is really looking at that from the perspective of, yes, you're a center of excellence. Finance, HR, supply chain. You are a center of excellence that deeply understands the functional motion of your organization. But that shouldn't limit your capacity to do your job, right? And I think that when you look at everything that we saw in day one, the AI, the connections, the unification of that customer, the unification of the business, I think that's really what ServiceNow is thriving in at the moment. And it was funny because I was thinking about it, and okay, I got these. Thank you, Christine. Hair ties. Y'all know, listen, it is not like just hope and a dream and maybe some tying that gets this to stay up there all day. It's elastic. Right? It's rubber bands, people. And when Christine gave me these, I was chuckling, and I was thinking about it this morning as I was wrapping my hair up into this dirty knot that sits at the top of my head most days. ServiceNow is a whole lot like these elastics. Okay, bear with me. I swear it's going to make sense. If you've ever shopped for these, like with your daughter, with a wife, with your friends, like, ladies, you know what I mean? These elastics come in a bazillion different colors. They have rubber bands. You got every shape and size. You got them for thick hair, for thin hair, but like, they're designed. Now, one might think, why should they have a design on them? Liz, you're just sticking them in a bun, right? Yeah, this for me is what holds my hair up, right? It's foundational to me being able to get this done. I am just out racing this sunlight glow. Anyway, back to my hair. So when I think about what pulls all of it together, is it my hair? Is it water? No, it's foundational. It pulls it all together, but it's not necessarily seen. And people don't necessarily know that it's there. And they don't necessarily have to know how it works. No one needs to know how my hair gets into a bun. They just know that my hair gets into a bun. And you know what? Everyone gets their hair into a bun differently. Some of them are going to use just the elastic like I do. Some are going to use bobby pins. Some are going to use a hair bun contraption. But for my hair, that elastic's foundational. And if I decided to wear my hair down in a braid, well, then you would see the elastic because the braid, it's down at the very end of the braid. ServiceNow is a heck of a lot like these hair ties, whether they want to admit it or not. It's foundational. It's foundational, and they're aiming to be foundational for business. And with the customers they work with and the customers that I had a chance to talk with during my time here at Knowledge, they view it as foundational. It's not, yeah, sure. It started as the rubber band that everyone could see, comes in different colors, it suits lots of different needs. And that's maybe where it started. But now it is what keeps the strategy moving, and it's what connects the intention of what you wanted to do with what the outcome is. Is it the outcome? No. Does it facilitate the outcome? Does everyone who sees the outcome need to understand that the reason why the outcome is what it is because it's there? No. But you need to know, and the person using this as a foundation needs to know that you can build anything on top of it, that it's versatile, it's flexible, and that in a windstorm, this bad boy isn't moving. It brings resilience. That's what customers are looking for. And that's what I heard the most when walking around the floor and getting to talk with customers and eavesdropping. I eavesdrop. You guys know that, right? People who invite me to shows, you get that I walk around the show floor and I eavesdrop on your customers, talking to your people in your booth. Sorry. But that's what they're looking for. They're looking for their hair ties. And I appreciate that. When we talk about data here, we're not talking about, I think a lot of times when people get into data conversations and when we sit at vendor conferences and don't take my word for it, I'm just going to ramble here for a second. But when it comes to data and what people thought about data, certainly here at ServiceNow and across the board, you got to check out my new colleague, Mike Nee. Follow him on Twitter, LinkedIn, all of that. He's going to be giving his insights into his coverage of data to decisions since I've been abandoned by Doug Henshin. But whatever, Doug, it's fine. That's a whole other day. But check out Mike Nee and check out his thoughts on this. But here's my modest 2 cents on what I heard about data here. A lot of times when people engage in data conversations, they have a lofty strategy. There's like a vision of what we want to do with data. But then it starts to get into a commoditized conversation about ETL, no copy, where did it go, how did it stack, where we get into this very commoditized conversation. So while we have this really beautiful vision of data and what we really want it to be for our organization, it's the oil, it's the fuel, right? We have all these great conversations, but when push comes to shove, we're talking about how it stacks and how much it costs to get from here to there. We talk about it like we're having some type of shipping conversation. What I found really interesting, and I hope to see more of it the more this rolls out with ServiceNow, was that we didn't talk about it as a commodity. We didn't talk about data as a commodity. And yes, they have a data fabric, and yes, they have all the technology that moves and can really connect data, not just across workflows and to power those workflows, but can make that data and that intelligence, the analytics from it, level up and really power autonomous actions and behaviors even outside of the ServiceNow instance. And certainly the Google announcement with, working together with Google Cloud on, their agent to agent framework, and enabling those handoffs and enabling that agentic collaboration. That's important. That's strategic. That's not talking about shipping things from here to there. And I appreciate that, because certainly as a marketer and certainly in service and in experience, we tend to talk about data as a backwards looking commodity, something that we can use to have some type of self-congratulatory moment over what we did, or that we were able to level up a simple recommendation to an agent to make that agent's life easier in the moment of their call. But we're not necessarily really talking about that bigger strategy that we have to implement, and how data needs to be strategic and how we need to have strategy around data. And ServiceNow really took the time to have that conversation yesterday. So kudos on that. For a lot of the individual announcements, certainly there's an acquisition. Again, check with Mike Nee. Lots of stuff happening, sales revenue. My colleague Martin Schneider posted a video last night. I reposted it. Certainly, if you want to go on LinkedIn, go check it out. So you'll get thoughts there and what's happening in sales revenue, and why the chief growth officer really needs to be paying attention to what's happening here at ServiceNow. But I'm going to say this to my CX peeps. Go have a conversation with your partner in experience, being the CIO. Ask about being on ServiceNow. Are you a ServiceNow house? Do you have ITSM that's working on ServiceNow? Is ServiceNow connecting some of your operational functions and those core business functions? Ask those questions about what services, what solutions, what actions, what experiences are being powered by that, and where could you possibly be looking elsewhere? I said a very similar thing to you guys when when we were at Oracle, that we need to have these conversations and understand where we are. Are we on OCI? Are we on Azure? Are we on AWS? Are we on ServiceNow? The reason why I say that is that oftentimes we get really, really keyed in and way too focused on our functional fiefdom of technology and the brands that we are very comfortable with, because those are the brands we live on. And the reality is, it's time for those brands to live on the foundation that the rest of our business is on. We need to start building accordingly. So have that conversation. Have the conversation about ServiceNow with your CIO. Ask about where those integrations are. If you're a Genesys customer, if you're a Five9 customer, if you are a NICE customer, hey, shout out to NICE. Strategic partnership just announced yesterday with ServiceNow, with the intention of connecting those AI interactions with the very real intention of connecting not just your workforce management solutions and your AI solutions, and yes, your omni-channel experiences and your voice. NICE struck the strategic partnership and with ServiceNow in order to have that bidirectional goodness, to look at that holistic process, to not keep the contact center over there, right? So if you are, if you are on these platforms, have a conversation about those partnerships with ServiceNow. Make the conversation happen. Make it strategic. And start to investigate if there are things you're missing out on because you haven't had the conversation before. Okay, I'm catching a flight home today. I'm out of here. Last day. Gonna go catch some more of the keynote, but I got to get out of here. Guys, thanks for hanging in, and more later.